put one member of the SAPS at the end of the queue so there's no new people join the queues. And we process every voter that we had in our voting stations. Basically, that is the situation in the province. I know there have been reports of several incidents that took place. Some of them have been brought to our attention and some had not. We regress that there were a few incidents that shouldn't have happened, but did happen. I know in Umlalazi municipality in Ashowe, an IEC official was assaulted by the voter in one of the voting stations who was annoyed by the fact that his name was not on the voter's roll. In Caterich, we had a voter that was allegedly assaulted by a member of the SAPS after an altercation between the voter, the presiding officer, and the member of the police. We regrettably inform you of 2 lives that we have become aware of that were lost yesterday in our province. One of them is a voter that fell off a bakkie that was transporting people to a voting station and was run over by the bakkie. We also have a stepping incident in Bulwa, in Herikwala districts, where an altercation happened outside of the voting station, which resulted in the stepping and somebody losing a life. These are very unfortunate incidents that we wouldn't want to see happening around elections. The Bulwa incident had nothing to do with the elections, but unfortunately it happened too close to the perimeter of the voting station. Lastly, we want to thank the voters in KwaZulu-Natal for braving everything that was going on yesterday and staying in those lines. At 11:30, there were still people in the queues that were being processed in venues like the City Hall and other high population VDs in the townships. And we appreciate how people appreciate our democracy and will brave anything to be able to exercise their vote. The final announcement is that from where we are now, political parties and candidates have got until 9 p.m. tomorrow to lodge Section 55 objections. These are the objections that could have material impacts on the results that we would have issued, because we are processing results as we go, and parties now and independents are aware that this is the window now where they could lodge any objections if they believe there is something that happened that could have a material impact on the results. They can lodge those objections up until 9 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PO. We are going to take questions, and if we could use that mic stand for our questions, that mic stand at the back. We're ready to take questions. Clive, we use that mic. And anyone following can follow behind Clive.
Thanks, Taban, for the opportunity. My name is Clive Ndo. I'm from the Witness newspaper. I have 2 questions. The first one is around the issue of people, because of the length of time they spent in queues, ended up giving up and going back home without voting. Can maybe the IEC give us an idea of how significant the number was in terms of those kind of things? And also, there were a number of people who were saying that because of the technical glitches in the IEC systems, their names were not reflected, on the system. So I just want to check whether the objections which political parties will be lodging, whether that can be regarded as a legitimate objection to say so many party members did not vote, and therefore the results are compromised. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Dennis Dalbort from Netwerk 24. I visited the Durban City Hall yesterday, and one of the IEC officials informed me that various voters voted at that station without the necessary Article 24A registration form. Now, that is an illegal thing to do. I just want to know how the IEC will handle that situation, and is there a possibility that that whole voting station should redo their votes? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Fanele Mhlongo from SABC News. I would like to check from Mama Masinga. We've been told that there is an IEC official that has been arrested in Plessesley in a voting station in Maritzburg. So we would like to check why was that official arrested.
Thank you. Looks like there are no other questions, PO.
Trust Fanele to remind me of things I didn't want to talk about. You are absolutely correct. I will start with your issue in Plessesley in Pietermaritzburg. It is correct. There is an IEC official that was arrested. What had happened is that later on in the day, the official, he was an area manager of the Electoral Commission. Area managers are an integral part of our distribution value chain. They are the link between our storage sites and the voting stations. So the area manager had left, wanted to top up one of the items that we use at voting station. And when he went to the storage facility to pick up what needed to be topped up, he realized that they had left one box at the voting station in the morning during the dispatch, and decided to take that box and take it back to the voting station. When he got back to the voting station, he was then accosted by members of political parties who wanted to know what is this box that you are sneaking into the voting station in the middle of voting. And they then called the SAPS, and we checked and we established that it was the sealed box of additional ballots that had not been distributed. But because the SAPS was advised that all ballot papers had been issued in the morning, even though they were sealed and unused, they wanted him to go and answer for that at the police station, and the box was confiscated by the SAPS as well as part of the evidence, because they wanted to investigate what was going on. We have been consulted. The matter is under investigation, but we have shared our version of what happened with the SAPS in Plessesley. The Durban City Hall, the Section 24A, there is no form that needed to be filled at the voting station. The Section 24A provision is a provision that enables a person who may not have registered at the City Hall, probably registered in Pietermaritzburg and found themselves in the City Hall in Durban or close to town and chose to go to the City Hall, which is what always happens. And they needed to pre-notify us before the 17th of May that they intend voting outside of their voting districts. Once they are pre-approved by the Commission, they are then put on the supplementary list of people because they wouldn't ordinarily be on the voters' roll of the City Hall. So in terms of what happens when they arrive at the voting station, they don't have to fill the form. They are already pre-approved. If the VMD is working the way it's supposed to function, on the VMD itself, we have a voters' roll, and then we've got a list of all the pre-approved Section 24A cases. If we scan your ID in a working VMD, we get a message that confirms that the person is already pre-approved for Section 24A provision. In cases where the VMD didn't work as planned, we had a hard copy of all approved Section 24A cases, as well as a hard copy of the voters' roll in every voting station. So with or without the VMD, the process wasn't supposed to stall in voting stations, because the primary tool to verify a voter at a voting station is the hard copy of the voter's roll. And in terms of the verification of people that are Section 24A cases, is the list of pre-approved Section 24A cases. So that's the process, the process that was supposed to unfold. At this stage, we do not have information that this process was not followed, but everything that is brought to our attention, either through political parties or anyone who would have observed any anomaly at the voting station, can bring that information to us and it can be investigated. But all our staff understood that you have an electronic version of the voter's roll, as well as the list of pre-approved Section 24A cases, as well as hard copies of both those documents at the voting station for use. If there's someone who made an allegation that people who were not qualifying for Section 24A cases were administered through this provision at the City Hall, we'll be happy to investigate that and ascertain what would have happened. In terms of people who may have arrived at our voting stations and were turned back because their names did not appear on the voter's roll, it depends which version of the voter's roll we're talking about. If it's the electronic voter's roll on the VMD, our staff understand that the primary tool to verify voters at the voter's roll is the hard copy, at the voting station is the hard copy voter's roll. So if your name was not on the hard copy voter's roll, unfortunately, we couldn't assist you at a voting station level. If people were turned away, voting in South Africa, other than the days we administer special votes, is 1 day. There is no plan to have another voting day to accommodate any other eventualities that may have happened at the voting station. If there is an objection to us, that there is a mechanism within the Commission to deal with objections, and they will be dealt with within that framework which exists for managing objections. But anyone who was in the queue and waited for too long and ended up deciding to go home, unfortunately, there is no provision in the country to set up another day to attend to people who may have given up on election day. So that's the framework as it currently stands.
I just think that we misunderstood each other. There were voters at the Durban City Hall from another district that voted at Durban City Hall without the necessary 24A application. Now, that was confirmed to me by the IEC officials in the City Hall. Now, I just want to confirm then with you, keeping your response in mind, is the IEC aware of those instances, and what happens in such an instance where voters voted at a specific voting station from another district without that form? Thank you.
On our side, the only person who is allowed a Section 24A provision is a person who pre-notified us before the 17th of May that they would like to vote outside of their voting station. If something like that reaches us, we will investigate it. We are not aware of it. You may have spoken to that official. We are not aware who that official is, and we'll be more than happy to investigate incidents like that. In terms of what happens next, voting on election day is not done through envelopes. So once the ballot papers are inside a ballot box, you cannot isolate a ballot paper to a particular individual. So we cannot differentiate that ballot paper from all the other ballot papers in the ballot box, so nothing will happen in terms of that. What then happens is that when parties lodge objections or independents lodge objections, we then investigate, and whether we can quantify that. If we can quantify what you are referring to, we are then able to establish if that incident may have material impact on the results of the elections. If it has impact, the commission that directs on how we move forward in terms of that particular voting station that was affected. Just on the City Hall is a very famous voting station. Whoever finds themselves in town will go to the City Hall and try their luck. What was supposed to happen is that anyone who comes to the City Hall, like any other voting station, we first check you on the voters roll and then we check you on the list of pre-approved Section 24A cases. If you don't appear in any one of those, you were not granted a ballot. If we are aware of somebody that was granted a ballot, we would like to investigate that because the framework is very clear. Our teams understand. And if you were granted a Section 24A and you came from any part of KwaZulu-Natal, you still qualified for 3 ballots. If you had crossed provincial borders, you only qualified for 1 national ballot.